beach in Malibu, and I said my first lines of dialogue as a professional actor. In the fall of 1964, I was standing in front of a camera on a freezing cold...
Sally Field, the girl next door with an unforgettable smile, captivated millions. But beneath that radiant charm, Hollywood was quietly weaponizing her innocence. Gidget and the Flying Nun were not just roles, they were cages. And while the world adored her, behind the scenes her talent was dismissed as fluff, her dreams treated as jokes. Was she the ultimate sweetheart, or the ultimate victim of a ruthless industry? Gidget helped Schroyer, her eldest daughter, point out that their pretty faces are worse than their testy cumin. Sally Field was America's darling, a name that conjured images of sun-kissed beaches and wholesome charm. When she stepped into the spotlight in the 1960s as the bubbly Gidget, audiences fell in love. The Flying Nun followed, cementing her image as Hollywood's ultimate sweetheart. But what the world didn't see was how those roles came with an invisible price tag, a career defined by innocence and stripped of depth. Hollywood had decided who Sally Field was before she ever had a chance to prove otherwise. Gidget made her a household name, but it also locked her into a stereotype. By the time The Flying Nun aired, executives saw her not as an actress, but as a commodity. She was marketable but not versatile, cute but not commanding. Studios didn't believe she could carry a dramatic role, and worse, they didn't want her to try. For Sally, the adoration came with a gnawing sense of discontent. In interviews, she spoke warmly of those early roles, but privately they haunted her. She knew her talent ran deeper than the characters she was playing. The offers that came her way felt like shallow repetitions, more sweet roles, more smiling through the same saccharine lines. Her reflection in the mirror became a painful reminder of the box she couldn't seem to escape. Behind the laughter and light-hearted personas, Sally's reality was far darker. Casting directors dismissed her ambition outright. At one audition, an executive reportedly chuckled, "Drama isn't for everyone, Sally. Maybe stick to what you're good at." Such moments weren't rare, they were the norm. Each rejection was a blow, a cruel reinforcement of the idea that Sally Field was a pretty face and little more. But Sally wasn't one to fold. While the public embraced her as a cheerful icon, she was quietly battling to redefine herself. She enrolled in acting classes, desperate to hone her craft and prove the doubters wrong. Yet even this move was met with skepticism. Her peers questioned her motives. Why would a successful actress, already on magazine covers, need acting lessons? But her smile remained flawless for the cameras, but it masked a storm of frustration. Was she chasing a dream that Hollywood would never allow her to have? The very system that had handed her fame was now her greatest obstacle. For Sally, the world she had once longed to join began to feel like a gilded prison. The pain was palpable, especially in her moments of solitude. She once reflected, "I wasn't sure if I wanted to keep fighting or walk away entirely." Still, she pushed forward, determined to shatter the image that had both built and broken her. But behind the bright lights, something was deeply wrong, and no one saw it coming. Sally Field had spent years trapped in an industry that refused to see her potential. The studios had built a version of her that was profitable, sweet, light-hearted, and safe. But when she tried to break out of that mold, Hollywood responded with cruelty. She wanted serious roles, but the industry laughed at the idea. Casting directors dismissed her outright. When she auditioned for dramatic parts, she was met with blank stares or polite rejections. One executive bluntly told her, "Audiences don't want to see you cry, Sally. They want you to smile." The words cut deep, but worse than the rejection was the ridicule. She wasn't just being overlooked, she was being mocked for even trying. There was a moment, sitting in her car after yet another failed audition, when she questioned everything. Had Hollywood been right about her all along? Maybe she wasn't meant for drama. Maybe she should accept her fate, take the easy sitcom roles, and stop fighting a battle she couldn't win. But something inside her refused to surrender. If the industry wouldn't take her seriously, she would force them to. She threw herself into acting classes, studied with legendary coaches, and transformed the way she approached her craft. She knew that if she ever got the right opportunity, she had to be ready. That opportunity came in the form of Norma Ray. But getting the role wasn't easy. The studio didn't want her, the director wasn't convinced, the producers pushed for someone else. Sally had to fight for the part, not just in auditions, but in the very room where decisions were made about her career. She finally won the role, but the real battle was just beginning. Norma Ray demanded everything from her, physically, emotionally, mentally. She poured herself into the character, pushing herself to the edge. The filming process was grueling, and the pressure was overwhelming. She doubted herself constantly, fearing that if she failed, it would be the final confirmation that she was never meant to do drama. Then, the impossible happened. Sally Field won an Academy Award for Norma Ray. The industry that had laughed at her was now applauding. The woman they had dismissed as a lightweight was now standing on the biggest stage in Hollywood, clutching an Oscar. She had done it, but as she walked off that stage, something unexpected settled over her. Instead of triumph, she felt empty. The validation she had craved for so long didn't bring the relief she thought it would. The fear didn't vanish, the doubt didn't dissolve. If anything, it grew stronger. Because deep down, she wasn't sure if Hollywood's applause was real, or if it was just another illusion. And just when she thought she had proven herself, a betrayal she never expected spiraled her. At the height of her success, Sally Field found herself entangled in a love story that seemed straight out of a Hollywood script. She and Burt Reynolds were one of the most talked about couples of their time, two charismatic stars, both beloved by audiences, both seemingly destined for each other. To the public, their romance was thrilling, glamorous, and passionate. They were the kind of couple that made headlines, the kind fans couldn't get enough of. But behind closed doors, the reality was far different. Burt Reynolds was charming and magnetic, but also controlling. What started as playful protectiveness soon turned into something much darker. He had a powerful presence, and Sally often felt like she was shrinking under it. His jealousy was suffocating, his temper unpredictable. Their arguments were explosive, leaving her emotionally drained. She tried to make it work, convincing herself that this was love. But deep down, she knew she was losing pieces of herself. She had spent years fighting to be taken seriously as an actress, only to now find herself fighting to be seen as an equal in her relationship. Still, she stayed. The media adored them, and walking away would mean admitting that the fairy tale was a lie. She endured the tension, the manipulation, and the emotional scars that built up with every fight. And each time she appeared in public, she painted a smile, convincing the world that everything was perfect. But the cracks were too deep to hide. Eventually, she left. And when she did, she walked away not just from a man, but from years of suppressed pain. For a long time, she stayed silent about what happened between them. The world saw their breakup as just another Hollywood split, messy and dramatic, but nothing out of the ordinary. No one knew the weight she had carried. Years later, in an interview, she finally spoke out, and what she revealed stunned everyone. She admitted that her relationship with Burt Reynolds had been one of the most damaging experiences of her life. She described feeling controlled, diminished, and emotionally exhausted. She confessed that staying with him had chipped away at her identity, making her question who she was and what she truly wanted. And the most shocking part, she revealed that when Burt Reynolds was dying, he reached out to her. But she never responded. It was a revelation that divided fans. Some understood her pain and her need to protect herself from the past. Others saw it as cold, unforgiving. But for Sally, it was closure. A final, painful decision that wasn't made out of spite, but out of self-preservation. She had given too much of herself to that chapter of her life. She refused to relive it. Yet, just as she thought she had moved on, a new battle was waiting. One that had nothing to do with love or scandal. One that was happening inside her own body. But her nightmare wasn't over, because, behind the scenes, her body was fighting a battle she didn't even know about. Hollywood is a machine that thrives on reinvention, but its loyalty is fleeting, especially to women. For years, Sally Field had defied expectations, shattering the industry's perception of her. She had fought for serious roles, proven her worth, and carved out a career that demanded respect. But time is an enemy in an industry that worships youth. No matter how much talent she had, no actress is immune to the ruthless ticking of the Hollywood clock. The shift was slow at first, subtle, almost imperceptible. The scripts that once flooded in became fewer, and the offers were less appealing. Directors who had once championed her now hesitated. Her name, once a guarantee of box office success, no longer carried the weight it once did. Then, almost overnight, it happened. Hollywood moved on. One moment she was an A-list star, the next she was invisible. The roles dried up, the calls stopped coming. Projects she had been in talks for suddenly went to younger actresses, women who hadn't fought nearly as hard to earn their place. She watched as men she had once acted alongside, co-stars who had aged just as she had, continued to land lead roles, their wrinkles seen as distinguished, their experience an asset. But for her, aging was a liability. She had spent her entire life proving she was more than just a pretty face, more than just the sweet girl from Gidget or the Flying Nun. But none of that mattered anymore. Hollywood didn't care about the battles she had won. It cared about what it had always cared about: who was young, who was marketable, who was profitable. And Sally, no matter how talented, no matter how accomplished, was no longer what the industry deemed valuable. She tried to hold on, to find roles that would allow her to continue doing what she loved, but with each rejection, the reality became clearer. There was no place for her anymore. She had given everything to Hollywood: her time, her energy, her youth, and now it was as if she had never existed at all. She was being erased in real time. For the first time in her life, Sally Field was forced to confront a brutal truth. Her career was fading, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. But then, just when the world had forgotten her, she reappeared, and no one was prepared for what they saw. For years, Sally Field had faded from the public eye, her absence a quiet confirmation of Hollywood's cruelty. Then, without warning, she reappeared, and the world was stunned. It wasn't just that she had returned, it was how she returned. The woman who once symbolized youth and charm was now unrecognizable, her transformation sparking a wave of speculation. The rare public appearance sent a shockwave through social media. Some fans marveled at her natural aging, praising her for resisting Hollywood's obsession with plastic surgery. She wasn't trying to hold on to youth, she had embraced time, letting the years shape her without artificial intervention. But not everyone saw it that way. Others whispered that something was wrong, that her dramatic change wasn't just age, but something far more unsettling. Rumors began to swirl. Had she been sick? Had she undergone a drastic lifestyle change? Some pointed out her frail frame, her thinning hair, and the way her movements seemed slower, more deliberate. Was she hiding an illness? Had she withdrawn from Hollywood because of a private battle no one knew about? Every photo, every small detail became a source of wild speculation. The woman the world had once adored had returned, but she wasn't the Sally Field they remembered. She stayed silent as the theories ran wild, allowing the mystery to build. Then, in an unexpected interview, she finally broke her silence, and what she said left fans speechless. She spoke about the brutal reality of aging, about how Hollywood had conditioned women to fear the passing of time, to see wrinkles as failures and gray hair as a sign of irrelevance. She refused to play along. She had spent her entire life proving she was more than just a face, more than just an industry's idea of beauty, and now she was done pretending. But there was something else in her words, something that lingered beyond her defiance, a cryptic, almost eerie sense of finality. She spoke about life, legacy, and the fleeting nature of fame. She admitted that stepping away from Hollywood wasn't just a choice, it had been a necessity. She had spent decades in front of cameras, and now she wanted to disappear. And just like that, she left the world with more questions than answers. Had she said goodbye for good? Was this her way of preparing for something no one was ready to accept? But it was her final message that truly sent chills down everyone's spine. Sally Field spent her entire life in the relentless grip of Hollywood, fighting for respect, proving her worth, and battling an industry that discarded women the moment they stopped fitting its mold. But now, at 78, she is free from the expectations, the demands, the constant need to prove that she still matters. She no longer craves the spotlight. She has deliberately stepped away from it. In a recent interview, Sally revealed unsettling truths about fame, aging, and mortality, truths that many found difficult to hear. Fame isn't real, she admitted, her voice calm but firm. It's a trick. It's something they build around you, and then one day they decide you don't exist anymore. She spoke with the clarity of someone who had seen it all, someone who had lived inside the illusion and survived its collapse. She wasn't bitter, she was simply done. She reflected on the decades she spent chasing validation, the nights she lay awake wondering if she was enough, if she had done enough. But as time passed, so did her need for approval. Hollywood had let her go, but more importantly, she had let Hollywood go. She didn't miss the red carpets, the flashing lights, or the endless, suffocating pressure to stay relevant. She had escaped the machine. And yet, her words carried an undeniable weight, because buried beneath her acceptance was something deeper, something haunting. She spoke about time and how little of it we truly have. She admitted that she had thought a lot about her mortality, about the way people disappear, their names fading into history, their voices growing distant until they are nothing but echoes. She was preparing for something, though she never said exactly what. Then came the statement that left audiences stunned. When asked how she wanted to be remembered, she didn't hesitate. "I don't," she said simply. "I don't want to be remembered as an actress. I don't want to be remembered at all." It was a chilling admission, one that defied everything Hollywood stood for. The industry was built on legacy, on making sure that names and faces lasted forever. But Sally wanted none of it. She didn't want statues or retrospectives. She didn't want nostalgia-filled documentaries or tribute reels. She wanted to disappear completely, to let go of the world, just as the world had once let go of her. And now, as she lives far from the cameras, far from the noise, she is more at peace than she has ever been. Her legacy is not in awards or movie roles, not in magazine covers or red carpets. Her legacy is in the choice to walk away. The interview ended, but the eerie silence that followed was deafening. People weren't sure what to make of her final words, because they weren't just words, they were a farewell. And now, at 78, Sally Field has one final message for the world, but are we ready to hear it? The world has always expected something from Sally Field, whether it was a smile, a performance, or a desperate fight to remain in Hollywood's favor. But now, in her final years, she has nothing left to give, and for the first time, she doesn't feel the need to. Her last message to the world isn't a grand farewell, a carefully crafted goodbye, or a plea to be remembered. It's something far more unsettling. Silence. In that silence lies her truth. Sally Field has chosen to disappear not because she is bitter or afraid, but because she understands something that most people refuse to accept. Fame is temporary. Beauty is temporary. Even existence in the grand scheme of things is temporary. And while Hollywood desperately clings to the illusion of permanence, she has let it all. But is the world ready to hear it? Ready to face the reality that even icons fade? That even the most beloved stars eventually step out of the light and into the quiet? Most people spend their lives chasing immortality, whether through art, legacy, or fame. But Sally Field's greatest act of defiance was in rejecting all of it. She has no intention of holding on to the past, of forcing the world to remember her. She has walked away from the illusion, and in doing so, she has found the kind of peace that few ever achieve. Maybe that's the real lesson in Sally Field's story. Not just about Hollywood, not just about fame, but about life itself. And if this story made you think, if it made you feel something, don't just scroll away. Share it, discuss it, and if you want more stories that reveal the hidden truths behind fame, make sure to follow us